Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band related podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, pissing on a priest here in Brooklyn, New York. Don't worry, listeners, I am not alone. Who do I see over there with some spinning, glowing red eyes? Who is that?
Oh, well, it's me speaking to you from the mouth inside my mouth. It's Steve Guntley here from Austin, Texas. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the podcast. It's all about magical vagina statues, radical ogre mohawks, and of course, pissing on priests. That's because this is a podcast about RawHead Rex, an early Clive Barker adaptation from our good friends at Empire Pictures. We're excited to be talking about this one. It's a wild little time, and I think a good movie to jump into.
It is a good movie to jump into. Even better to jump into it with a guest, and we have a really special guest today. You've probably, if you're a horror fan worth their salt, you have probably checked out her amazing YouTube channel, Horror Movies and Beyond, which I would love for you to plug when you get a chance to explain your mission statement with that channel, because I really, really love it. Amazing podcast / YouTube content creator and all around awesome horror hound, Ivotres Littles. How are you? Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you here and excited to have an opportunity to revisit RawHead Rex, a movie I saw for the first time a year ago, and it didn't really make much of an impression on me at that time. And then I watched it again yesterday for this show, and I had a damn good time with this movie. I don't know, maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it last time, but I watched it this time. I'm like, yeah, this is fun as hell. So we usually let our guests kind of select what movies they'd like to talk about. You picked RawHead Rex. It's a deep cut, which I love. Why did you go for this movie in particular?
Well, I did see it over a year ago. It was kind of a random thing, maybe longer ago. I don't know, but it was like random. And because the cover, but also my niece, she used to tell me, RawHead Rex. Oh my God, it scared me to death. My niece is like 3.5 years younger than me. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say she's 3.5. I'm like, wow.
Wow, she has taste.
Yeah.
I have to explain that because if people think niece is like young, it's like, no.
Oh, yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
No, she's only 3.5 years younger than me. And she saw this at a sleepover or something like that when she was young. And so she always told me I never seen it until like over a year ago. And I was just laughing because it just looks so ridiculous. But I didn't remember it, but I knew I seen it. So the second time I watched it was yesterday, and I thoroughly watched it. I was like, I had my food and my little energy drink or whatever. And I was looking at it and I was like, this was so crazy and wild. It was wild. But as I was looking, I was like, I see influence from movies after this, which I was like, I don't know. It was just me. Like two movies connected for me, which was Predator and Halloween.
Okay. Yeah.
Like there were some things because it's like this whole town is in there and they still die. I was like, come on, he's right there. And we all.
They kept saying evil dies tonight. It was really weird.
Yeah. What the hell was that?
But it was like this in RawHead Rex where the whole town see it and they're all there and he just picks them off. I was just like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
And then Predator, because there were some people hanging from the trees and dragged. I was like, wait a minute.
See, this is why I love having this conversation, because we all sort of came to this movie at different times. Like you guys saw it maybe a year and a half ago. I saw this movie sometime in the 90s. This was one I had seen. I think I only saw it once, maybe twice, but it sort of had a reputation with me as being kind of ridiculous. And if I'm being honest, it was one of the movies when we had the mission statement for the show where we're like, okay, well, it's not just going to be Full Moon. It's going to be anything Charles Band. Then we even stretched it further because it was like, okay, so this is Empire, but this is just a movie Empire distributed. It's not an Empire production. So it's not a Charles Band production, but I don't give a shit. I was just like, I saw it
Definitely
on the
get rid of
list of Empire movies, and I'm like, yes, because there's a couple where it's like I've been looking for an excuse to go back. A buddy of mine actually, coincidentally, completely free of this podcast, was having a conversation with me a couple weeks ago, right when October was starting, about horror movies, and he said, "Yeah, I think I posted a movie," and he goes, "Oh, that cover used to freak me out. That and RawHead Rex." And I was like, "Yeah, it is a pretty memorable VHS cover. The poster art for this movie is what I remember as being the VHS cover."
Yeah.
And when you see it, that side profile of the monster, and there's some like lightning bolts and stuff in the background. It's got a cool like blue-gray sky going on in the background. Like, it's a cool box. And I
It is.
remember thinking, and then and going into it this time, I was like, what am I going to get? Am I going to get sort of an overlooked gem that I've been meaning to revisit, and I finally did, like Pumpkinhead, which I watched recently a couple weeks ago and I hadn't seen in many, many years?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be just completely throwaway? And I'm happy to report it falls in the former. Well, maybe not a classic but based on my metrics of measuring the movie, definitely like you said, Ivotres, like, it's wild, Steve. It was fun. I sat there. It was my morning movie with my cup of coffee, and I just sunk into the couch and watched RawHead Rex.
Yeah. I mean, this you mentioned the video store. Like, this was definitely one of those VHSs that was burned into my head. Although the poster, like that really cool poster of him like coming up out of the ground with the lightning striking in the background, that was not the VHS cover I remember. What I remember was
this
just
could
like
be a Mandela effect thing for me then.
it could be. The one I had was just like a pair of
there.
It was like a pair of eyes, and then down below you have like the silhouette of Rex standing in like a kind of like a church door. And mostly like that didn't necessarily grab me as much as the title did. I remember thinking, RawHead Rex, what is that? It sounds like a Nintendo game. Like, it sounds like, I mean, honestly, you could take this character, shrink him down, and give him a skateboard, and it's a Nintendo game. He's got the rad mohawk. He's
basically Blanca.
He's got tude, he's got a practically catitude, nearly that level.
Well, I don't remember the VHS cover, which is surprising because I grew up when that was like the place to go on the weekends, and I do not remember. I remember my niece talking about it all the time. She'll even say, "You look like RawHead Rex," and I'm like, "What?" And I had no idea until I saw it. I was like, "Oh, that's."
I like to think that this movie made such an impression on her that RawHead Rex just became part of her vernacular. Like, she's just throwing it around as insults. Like,
I mean, for the record, she does not look like RawHead Rex.
Yeah, should be pointed out.
She's 9 feet tall, but that's really where the resemblance ends. Let me give you a little bit of background on this movie. RawHead Rex was released October 14th, 1986. It's directed by George Pavlo and written by Clive Barker. And it stars David Dukes, Kelly Piper, Ronan Wilmot, Niall Tobin, Cora Venus-Lunny, and Donald McCann. So I am excited because I think this is going to be our only opportunity on this show to talk about Clive Barker, he's a British writer. For those who aren't familiar, he came onto the literary scene in the mid-'80s with a series of short story collections called The Books of Blood, which are pretty iconic. I think a lot of horror fans grew up on those books. RawHead Rex was a story in Books of Blood Volume 3. And eventually, I feel like if you were into horror and you're like around our age, like the two names that were always tossed out, it's like the masters of horror. It's Stephen King first, and then it's Clive Barker. Like, he had that branding going for him really strongly. And I never actually got around to reading a Barker novel until a couple years ago, when I read the first volume of Books of Blood, and then I just read The Hellbound Heart earlier this year. And I actually really like his writing. It's very florid. It's very gothic. It's very visually interesting. Which I think makes sense that he would transition into being like a filmmaker, because I think he's got a better visual sense. And if you compare his filmmaking career with Stephen King's filmmaking career, there's very clearly, as far as somebody like being behind the camera calling the shots, I think Barker has the edge on that
Steve.
one.
Maximum Overdrive is better than anything we're going to talk about.
Look, who made who? That's all I have to say. Who made who? Yeah, but so Barker, this is some of his first film experience. He'd written and directed two 70s, and he wrote the screenplay to another Empire film called Underworld in 1985, which we'll talk about eventually as well. And that movie was also directed by George Pavlou, who was best known as a short film director. He only did one additional movie after this. It was a Gremlins knockoff called Little Devils, which I've never heard of before, but he passed away in 2010. But Clive Barker transitioned to a filmmaking career after this. Reportedly, it was because he wasn't happy with the way this one turned out.
He hated this movie.
He did not like this movie because he was really happy with the script. He did write the script himself. He was happy with that, and he just felt like it didn't translate, partially because of the budget, because of the rush production, the actors, whatever reason. So he decided that the next time he was going to lend out one of his stories for adaptation, he was going to take charge of it from the get-go. And that film would turn out to be Hellraiser, the adaptation of The Hellbound Heart. That film was intended to come out direct to video in 1987, but they did get a small theatrical release, which led to it being kind of a small cult success. What do you guys think about Hellraiser? It's always been an idea I love and a movie series I've never quite clicked with.
Ivotres, I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the first one till much later on VHS, but I liked it. The second one is my favorite.
The second one is
the second one just a new level, and it was very creepy. And I don't know, I liked it. I seen the first one, second one, the third one was a little weird. I was like, wait a minute. What's kind of happening?
It wasn't, I'm a defender of Hellraiser.
It wasn't bad, but it was like
that's about as silly as the franchise ever got. That's why I like that one. I like it when like very, very serious, like kind of drab and dour horror movies like the Hellraiser series get a silly one. They get a guy made of CDs who's going to throw them at you. Like
it was just a little different. I don't know, it was more sexual or something to me. I don't know, especially there was some scenes in there that was just a little
that was kind of how
cigarette burns and the CD guy, that was pretty cool.
CD
like there were some new Cenobites that were pretty cool. The fourth one, I was like that was the one in space, right?
Bloodlines.
Well,
it's in space, but it's also in the past.
Is that the one with Adam Scott?
It's got Adam Scott.
And because it shows you how it was built. The box was built.
Oh, is that what I think I stopped after 3. I've always kind of like half-heartedly wanted to get into the rest of the series, but I also hear it gets pretty bad after 3. So
it kind of shows you about that, like the puzzle box. It was meant to be, whatever. But then some of the Cenobites some were cool, but it was just kind of off. It was just so off. And then it just what happened?
They just did.
Like,
they did.
Why is this happening? And then I just quit. Like I think I quit after Judgment.
Okay.
I was like, so I know there's another one with Doug Bradley. I think 2. I think he came back.
Yeah, I forget.
And then I don't know, but whatever. After that, after the Judgment, I was done.
Yeah,
I was done. Yeah.
And Jared, were you ever a Hellraiser fan? We never really talked about Hellraiser much.
Yeah, I think it is something that ultimately I really like the concept, and I really like the look of some of the films more than I like the particular narrative beats or stories that are told. But I do remember that, like, when I first started watching horror movies, like Freddy was my gateway around like Nightmare 4, Nightmare 3, Nightmare 4. And it was, to me, I was like, oh, I can exist in this world because it's cool and it's alluring and it's creepy, but it didn't really scare me. But it's like Hellraiser felt different. Like Hellraiser felt like advanced horror. Like it felt like I was a kid and I felt like this is too like adult and I don't really understand the themes that they're getting at in this movie. And so I was into it for some of the gnarly gore that's in it. But I think a few years later, maybe as like a teenager, I went back and I was like, all right, let me watch these again. And I watched the first one and I like it. I don't love it. It's not like a desert island movie for me. But I do like it. Hellbound, I like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's sort of one, like if I can only take one from the franchise, I would take Hellbound. But I mean, I feel like it's kind of hard not to like the look of the Cenobites and Pinhead. Like, even
They're
if you're
really
not
creative.
yeah, even if you're not super invested in what's going on. And then I kind of felt a little apathetic toward the reboot from last year on Hulu. There was aspects of it I liked,
fine. Yeah,
but it wasn't I
bad.
wasn't head over heels. I was really hoping that this franchise was going to get kind of kickstarted in a way that was going to get me super excited. And I watched it and I went, that was fine. That was good enough. Yeah. But it didn't really make me want to see a whole Hellraiser universe based on that. But I mean,
no, not necessarily. Yeah. But, I mean, Barker is a pretty skilled director, I think, because he did two more movies. Yeah, he did 2 more movies after this. One is Nightbreed, which I think is really dope. Like, that's just a cool movie with really great creature designs and things like that. Like, I don't know.
It has great creature designs, but it's boring as hell. That is my opinion.
I will give you that. It's got some long stretches. Like, I think anytime they're not in that underworld city, like, it gets pretty boring. And then Lord of Illusions with Scott Bakula, which I haven't seen that in years. I remember really liking that. It's kind of like a noirish, like satanic kind of twisted.
I want to check that one out. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's been a couple years since I've seen it. I might want to go back to it, but that's really where Barker's film career kind of stopped. And he's, from what I understand, he's kind of a recluse. Like, he doesn't really like to go out and do much anymore, which I can get behind. But yeah, like I said, he wasn't crazy with the way that this movie came out, mostly because of the creature design. All right, so the filmmakers had 1 week to get this creature design together. I think they did the best they could. They put all of this accoutrement on this 7-foot-tall German guy who, this is his one and only film credit, is playing RawHead Rex. I don't know that he totally spoke English, but they put him in this getup and had him terrorize a village. I think they did their best, but like, the idea that Barker had was that this guy had like this, like, he's called Rawhead because in this book, his face looks like pounded up raw meat. Like, he's supposed to be kind of this unknowable thing. And they basically made him into Bebop from Ninja Turtles. That's kind of what he ultimately looks like, except a little cross-eyed. Like, he's got these googly eyes that just
Bebop.
You can't quite get past it, right? Like, it's a little bit of Bebop. Yeah.
Because when I was looking at it, I was like, gosh, it looked like something I've seen.
The same.
Yeah.
I had the same
but I couldn't figure it out. And I just continued to wonder
Bebop.
Now I would never look at it the same.
I mean, you can't quite get around it. Like, you know, it's a bit of a silly looking design, but I think this movie largely works because, it embraces its kind of B-movie nature. It's got some really bad shit supporting performances that I think are really fun to watch. And it's got a unique setting. I mean, how many monster movies are set in rural Ireland? I mean,
that was one thing I really loved about this movie, is that the opening credits start and we're like getting this tour of pastoral rural Ireland. And it's like neither a corn rig nor barley rig are spared.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a bunch of sheep. We've got a bunch of like old stone fences, and it's that, I think that gives this movie a little bit of personality, a little bit of character that you wouldn't have otherwise. Plus, it kind of makes it feel like it's rooted in some kind of actual like Gaelic mythology, and in kind of keeping with that, I think a lot of like Irish and British folklore sort of rooted in the idea of human folly, human arrogance, and stubbornness. Especially Irish stuff, and that's what happens here. RawHead Rex is unearthed because a very, very stubborn farmer doesn't want to leave the big scary stone pillar alone.
I know, which made no sense because as I was watching, I was like, okay, there's smoke. First of all, there was a thunderstorm with no clouds. Like, right then and there, I would have just like, you know what? I'm going in the house. I'm done for the day.
Or to go back to the pub. Yeah, exactly. Immediately.
And then he just kept trying to take the rock down, but the smoke coming out. I mean, I was just laughing. I was like, come on now.
He had like a personal vendetta against this rock. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I understand like your farmland is limited. It's a small island, but this rock is not that obtrusive.
Well, if Halloween 3 Season of the Witch taught me anything, it's that moving any stones, any Irish stones can lead to some bad things.
Every single time, every big rock in Ireland is cursed. Yeah, I think that's the lesson we can take away from this. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can kind of jump into it. I mean, this is a pretty basic setup. Like we said at the beginning, we see this large stone pillar that a farmer unearths to try and get out of his field, and pretty much immediately this big heavy metal looking ogre jumps out of the ground in probably the coolest shot of the movie. I think we're only
it's
seeing
so early. It's so early in the movie.
But that's the time, that's where Rex works best, is in profile. Like once you're looking at him like straight down the barrel, he's cross-eyed, he's got the mouth working inside the mouth, and like you don't focus on it enough to tell if it's like intentional or if we're just seeing the actor behind the prosthetics. So I always had that moment, like, am I just seeing the guy's mouth? Like, is this just like the big German guy behind the mask? But I think it is an intentional design choice. It's just kind of a silly one. They're going. I think they're going for like an aliens thing, but like, yeah, it doesn't fully work. But that initial shot of him jumping out of the ground and he's all dirty and he's got this old like leather tunic on and he's like the lightning crashing behind him. I'm like, all right, I'm on board, man. I'm on board. RawHead Rex. He's a big, cool, scary guy. Also, they never refer to him as Rex in the movie, which I was a little bummed about. But
yeah, they get going quick in this movie. Like that creature reveal jumping out happens 8 minutes into the movie.
Yeah,
and then I was like, he's already kind of starting to terrorize the town 12 minutes into the movie, and I was like, all right, like this thing has a sense of urgency getting started.
And it has a conscience because of the couple that was in the house where the magic door opened. She's like, I locked it. It's like, no, it's not. I was like, first of all, if I know I locked the door, I am not going out there to go check. Oh, well, the door's open. But when it burst in, first it ate her husband.
Yeah.
And then she's running for her life. And then she went into labor, kind of, going up the stairs. I'm like, the babies always come at the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to say it. RawHead Rex, he's an ally. He's against the patriarchy. He has a great respect for the power of womanhood, for the power of fertility. That's his weakness. Like he has a moment where he can kill like this pregnant lady who's going into labor, and he doesn't do it. And ultimately, as to skip to the end a little bit, like the only thing that has power, the only one who has power to contain him is a woman. Like a woman needs to be using her energy to capture him again. So, he's that's an interesting twist on it.
So when he was destroying that kitchen, he was really making a statement.
Exactly. Yeah, he's getting rid of gender norms.
Pretty much. But the babysitter, that I was laughing the entire moment from the kid in that trailer park.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to play a game, and then I guess his sister was making out with the guy who was such a jerk. He was so horrible. I was like, oh God. And he just was really trying to force himself on the girl. And he was mad because the brother was interrupting. I was like, man, that's just it's so crazy. I hope something happens to him horribly. Because I didn't remember what happened, even though I saw it over a year ago. I couldn't remember what was going on. And so I was like, I hope he goes down, like ate up. And he did in the most horrible way. And that's where I thought of the Predator.
Oh yeah. Especially the leaving limbs too. Yeah. Like she escaped him, but like she's still holding his hand when she gets out of the woods, which is a great goofy touch.
That's a great touch. And you're totally right. I would probably, I don't know that I would have got there on my own. Like, I don't know if I would have made the Predator connection, but now the more you talk about it, I'm like, that is a valid connection to make. And now I'm kind of like going back in my head and rethinking a bunch of these scenes. And I'm just like, yeah, let's see. This movie is okay. So let me ask a question to you guys, because by all measurable metrics, this is a monster movie.
Yeah,
sure. Is this a folk horror movie?
I feel like it's got some elements of that because like, it is very Irish in its identity because, it can't just be a monster. He also has to be a monster who is trying to corrupt the power of the Catholic Church.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's a very Irish spin to put on this. And I was never fully clear on what his motivations were, or like what Rex wanted out of everything other than to just rampage and kill people. Did I just like gloss over that? Did they make that clear?
Well, for me, I kind of that he was looking for minions, people to follow him, because there's some people he would just devour, and there's others that would look at those beady red eyes and there's twirling, and they would do stuff for him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was getting out of that. But
so the kind of flashing red eyes are a little like mind control type thing.
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to the folk horror thing, because the only one who's able to resist these hypnotic powers is the holiest man in the village, is the actual priest, while everybody else just like succumbs immediately because they're weak. So I was not totally clear on what the motivations were, but it did give us Ronan Wilmot, who plays the verger. I don't quite know what a verger is in the Irish church, but he's a reedy little bald guy who goes full on crazy the moment he touches the altar. And this performance is so over the top and so fun.
It's hilarious.
He is literally frothing at the mouth a lot of the time. And all right, again, to kind of jump around, proof positive that I didn't pay close enough attention to this the first time I watched it. I did not remember the extended scene of the priest being doused in monster piss to baptize him. I just like must have been looking away from the screen when that happened, and it didn't occur to me, because this time I had to rewind it a few times.
Yeah, well, you don't Google monster piss play.
What platform did you see that? Because I didn't see that.
So this is one of those cases where like I went to rent it off of Amazon Prime, but it was actually cheaper to buy it. It was like $3.99 to rent or $2.99 to own it. So I own the movie now.
So maybe,
and I rented it from Prime Video.
Okay, because I was on Vudu and that did not happen.
Yeah.
So they might have kind of blocked it out.
Maybe
because I remember him being there, but I didn't see, like, he was on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like kneeling before him,
and but there was nothing happening. Like the monster was standing in front of him, and I was like, why is he just doing this? But there was no indication of that.
Wow.
Yeah, so my version made it very clear he was getting monster peed on. Yeah. Maybe there are some versions where they cut that out, because that is like a pretty blasphemous image to include in your movie. Like,
I wish I would have saw that. It felt incomplete now.
Yeah. Oh, so were you like confused why we kept talking about priest pissing at the beginning of this episode?
You're like mental note. Don't go on the show again.
So we also like to pee on holy men. It's
because when you first said that, I was like, did I miss it? Because there was no distraction, and I was staring at the entire movie. I was like, no, the only weird thing is that he was kneeling in the cemetery or whatever in front of Rex, but there was nothing happening to him.
Wild.
He was just like, and I was like, why would he do that? And then it was the other guy, the older guy that was behind the giant tombstone.
Yeah, looking on horrified.
So we were on the same scene, but I didn't.
That was the scene. They
must have did something to where I couldn't see it.
That's really funny. I would not be surprised if that's like an edited like UK cut or something like that. Yeah, I would not be surprised. But that was a moment where I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, this movie's insane. Like, I love that they included something like that. And really there's not a whole lot of plot to discuss here, because it's just like a monster rampage. But that does lead us to talk about the actual protagonist of the film, who's played by David Dukes. He's a character actor I'm not familiar with. But he's an American. He's there with his family. And what is he doing? He's like making like a coffee table book about old churches or something like that. Is that his job? Or is he like a historian?
Photography or
Either way, he wears a cardigan and he looks boring. Like I don't like picking on actors, but I feel like he's kind of the problem in this movie, because I feel like he is bland.
no hero. Oh,
he is the unflavored oatmeal of movie protagonists.
Yeah,
that scene. Oh my god, I was just like, why is he even a dad? Okay,
Yeah.
And the mom was just okay when they were driving in the car and excuse me. Hold on. Okay. I almost knocked down my mic. That's how upset I am. Anyway, so they're driving the car after he figured out what happened. He's like, I'm out of here. Let's just get in the car and go. So they're on the road and the parenting skills are just completely terrible. And she's like, Mom, I have to pee. And it's like, well, you should have thought of that before we left. I'm like, how do you think of that before you leave? It was a little girl. So finally,
they 6 hours.
Yeah. Finally, they pulled over and she was like, go over there in them bushes. And he's like, are you going to go with her? No, she can go by herself. After you know that some weird thing is happening in a town, you're just going to let this 6-year-old girl go by herself.
It's like, I saw this monster in the bushes, no less. But go ahead. It's fine.
And then they take her and then open this gate that could barely open. Go on behind the field. Just go on and I'll stand right here. So if something happens to you, I won't make it in time. So she goes by there screaming. They find this thing on the ground and they're still standing there. She screams. Ah! They run. They leave the poor brother.
Oh.
He keeps looking at the car just in case. Rawhead shows up. The boy's fighting for his life. His dad finally run over there. Rex finally gets the boy, bouts the chop down. The dad is at the gate and stop right before. And then Rex chops. And then he's like, no, and then runs out the gate. You could have completed that. What the hell? And then he's mad at the cops for not doing their job. No, dude, you didn't do your job.
No.
Well, I think he made it very clear early that he's preoccupied more with photography and less with his family.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of the rest of the movie, like he's treating this horrible event, which should be like a pretty shocking, tragic event to happen in this movie. And it is given very little weight for the fact that like a 9-year-old boy got murdered by this monster. Like he treats it the rest of this movie kind of like a mild inconvenience rather than the worst tragedy anyone could possibly experience. Like there's just not a lot of conviction there. And his poor wife, like her role just basically gets eliminated for most of the movie. Like she just has to sit there hugging the daughter and crying. She does get the killing blow at the end of the movie, at least. But like, yeah, she basically is reduced to nothing.
I do like, he does get a little bit angrier as the movie goes on. And he gives one of my favorite lines ever, which is one of the older characters is trying to console him and says, why don't I get you a cup of tea? And he goes, why don't you go fuck yourself?
Yeah. And the guy's like, I'll pass that along then.
Yeah,
there is the part of the charm of this movie, I think, is that we have a lot of like classic horror movie tropes, like including, you mentioned earlier the young couple that was like making out, the boyfriend who was trying to pressure the girl into doing it. It's like, but when you take it with like these bucolic Irish settings that feel like they're out of the 1800s, and you have this boy, oh come on, then give us a shag, why don't you? You know, it's like there's something unintentionally a little silly and a little charming about that. Like we're seeing horror movies like put through a lens that it doesn't usually get seen through, and it's kind of a quirky one.
This movie reminded me, hear me out, if The Wicker Man, Track of the Moon Beast, and Dead and Buried had a threesome.
Okay.
You would get,
I would not want to be present for that.
Similar to RawHead Rex, I think. There's just elements from those that are just so odd that make this movie kind of stand out. Like, however we may feel about it as a movie, it is, for a lot of these reasons, pretty memorable. Like the Irish setting and the way these characters talk. And I always sort of like, I like a small nefarious town. And not that these people are Village of the Damned or Wicker Man, like plotting things together, but I do like that we get a real sense of the town. Like we really feel like Rex takes out a third of the population of this town.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
he really
I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, and they really they're this is like a movie that is set in the year that it was made. It's set in 1986. You see the boy reading the Secret Wars comics, like it's supposed to be a contemporary story, but the villagers are like one step above like pitchforks and torches. Like they are so wildly unprepared to deal with this threat. Who is just kind of like tearing through them like tissue paper. And of course, the only thing that can stop them is the power of religion. Which that's fine. That's a fine direction for it to take. Although, like, did anybody ever think it was weird that they made the stained glass like window in this church that has this red ogre demon on it? Like it's like they never thought to question that. It's like, oh, that's a normal thing we have in all the churches here.
Well,
I'm gonna stop doing that accent.
Like going back to that opening, when I saw the stained glass and the beady eyes, and it was like shining the light on the priest, I just knew he was no good. Like I was like, I don't trust this guy. But he just was like, it was so much cursing to be a priest. I was like, what is going on? But one of the most funniest things that happened, at least for me, I even wrote it down because I just laughed. It tickled me so much when that one guy, I don't know if it was a doctor or priest, he was like the older guy with the glasses. Yeah, and he was trying to escape Rex and everything. And he was trying to tell the priest, okay, you're going to do all this bidding for him. What are you going to like? What are you going to? I mean, I can't even talk. But like, once he's done with you, and I wrote it down because I just thought he was like, when it's finished with you, what do you think it's going to do with you? Kill me! I must have fell on the ground laughing.
There's so many great lines. Yeah. And I think he delivers the line too, where he's behind the other guy pushing him up the stairs, and he goes, "Get up the stairs, fuckface."
Yeah. Like just kind of like just incongruous language with this guy, like, which I guess is supposed to be the point. He's being completely corrupted by this monster, but also like, how would Rex, like this demon who's been buried in the field for like hundreds of years, how would he know the word fuckface? Like how would he bring that out in him? But that is just such a fun, wild-eyed performance, and I think all of that stuff is really cool. I really did tune out for the finale. Like once it started getting really kind of heavy duty with the lore and all of that, like it kind of lost me there. I was more into it for the monster rampaging through the village kind of stuff. Sure. Like I could have done like, honestly, it's like I approach horror movie plots like Coco Chanel. It's like I think you look yourself in the mirror and then you take away one element. Like we don't need that much exposition. We don't need that much mythology. Like keep it simple, keep it mean, and just establish your stakes and establish some way to kill the monster. I think that's really kind of all you need for a good monster movie.
But I think it did have like that Halloween Kills effect. Most of the time, the whole town, it just really like, how is the whole town, even when he had that one guy in the glasses up in the air for like 20 minutes and no one's shooting. It's like, oh, you're going to hit him. Well, he's dead. No, he's still moving. At this point, he was in the air for 20 minutes. Rex is exposed. Let's go. Let's start shooting. I mean, it was just explosion. I was like, this scene right here.
They are too ruly of an unruly mob.
Yeah, they're very polite.
I know, after you see this thing with teeth coming out from every which way on his face, it was ridiculous. That part. But you're right. That end was just taking too long. I was like, how does she even know? We haven't seen her for the last 20 minutes, and she shows up, grabs this relic, and how does she know? Like, how did she know to hold it up? And then it took forever. Those lights took forever to get to the point. I just was like, wow. Yeah,
there's like she has the inherent knowledge of motherhood. All mothers, once they have their child, they know how to kill an ogre.
Well, and you see sort of the spirit or whatever you want to call it coming out of the like stone thing that she's holding up. But it's happening, and we as like a conscious audience see what's happening. But then there's a really great delivery of a woman. like, yes, we get it. We see what's happening. It's a really unnecessary additional exposition to handhold you through this ridiculous, thing that this movie is trying to convey. But I laughed out loud, and I think that's sort of viewing this movie in 2023. That's kind of the best thing about it is there is a lot of elements that work in terms of like, oh, that's an interesting idea. That's cool. I could see how this would have looked or sounded in the short story. But this also has that like midnight movie, have a couple of drinks and have your friends over and just laugh from frame one to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it really works as both. And to me, like, properties like this are really endearing because I love to kind of watch movies and laugh at their silliness and ridiculous things in good fun. But I also like to be genuinely entertained and see some of the artistry. And I like this movie was like, we pointed out things about it that are really silly or that don't work. And we know Clive Barker didn't like it, but it also got terrible reviews when it was released. And I feel like that's were people really just like harping on the creature design that much back then? Because I feel if it was comparatively, the quaintness of the story should have been enough for some people who don't champion horror movies and slasher movies to kind of go, oh, this one's a little bit different, but they didn't. They savaged it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it got largely ignored over here. It really barely got any kind of theatrical release here. I think it does just have the benefit of having kind of a catchy name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see that title and it's like, it sounds gnarly. It sounds like and the 80s horror were all about like creating merchandisable characters, right? It's all your Jasons, your Freddys, your all of this, so having a character named RawHead Rex, that's like, ooh, okay, that's potential franchise. That's like this big scary looking monster. Like you can do something with it. But I think even in 1986, people thought this character looked a little silly. Like it's just something you can't fully get around. Like even if I admire some of the elements that went into its construction, like they're just he has angles that work for him, and then he has angles that just really don't.
He really should have been shot a lot more in the shadows. It's sort of, I don't know if they felt they had a cool like a really cool creature design, because he is lit very brightly.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe if they were worried, oh, we didn't have this costume is kind of piecemeal and we didn't have time to really put it together, that they would have kind of hid him.
Yeah.
Because they could have did that whole scene where he flips the van over.
Yeah.
And he's pulling guys through the window and he's coming up from above. And I feel like you could have cut some of that fast and he could have had just limbs scratching and things like that. And then any sort of profile could be in the shadows. And it could have been done like really effective. I feel like once they decided that they really wanted the camera to linger on this creature, it's a little too silly.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah, because I was like, I mean, the camera was like this, like, and I was just like, okay. Now, the more that it kept showing it closer and closer to the point like this, the more I was like, this looks stupid.
Yeah,
like it was. Yeah, it would have been better in the shadows. But the scariest thing wasn't even. It was probably all the howling and shrieking in the woods. I mean, to me, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Because first of all, I wouldn't even be in the woods if they're hollering, shrieking. Yeah. But there was one shot that I thought, man, I haven't seen anything like that in today's films. Is when the boy and the girl was running in the woods, and the camera was right behind them, and then the camera was right below them in the front. So I thought that was. I haven't seen anything like that in a long time since I think Evil Dead. I think they kind of did that.
I was gonna say they gave me a little bit of that shaky running through the forest cam.
Yeah, but it was like it was right behind them, but it was kind of tilted up, so you could see up and in the front. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I haven't seen like anything like that later. that much. But other than that, it was
Yeah, I liked that moment too. It reminded me of like old horror posters from like the 50s or something like that, you know, with like the people running from the low angles and all that. Like I feel like that was an intentional reference to that, you know. Like there are a lot of fun choices here. Like there's been talk of doing a remake. I don't think really any traction has happened on that in
I
probably
heard
20
that
years
too.
now. Yeah, but there's been talk of doing it. I don't know if this movie has enough of like a cult following to necessarily like drive that along. You know, I think this is definitely one of those movies that you could redo this really well. You know, I haven't read the short story, but like it feels like it's still a pretty simple, like elemental short story, you know, but I think this is the kind of thing with a little more time and a little more care could be done really well. I do appreciate what they did though, and I appreciate what this movie is on its own merits. For as goofy as it can often be, I think it's got a charm to it that a lot of monster movies like this don't really have.
It has a charm, and it does something else I really enjoy, which is it introduces the Tall Man Pub to the pantheon of the Green Man Inn and the Slaughtered Lamb.
I didn't catch the Tall Man Pub. You think that's a Phantasm reference?
Boy, do I.
Yeah. I hope so.
But I just like a pastoral Irish or Scottish pub as kind of a setting in some of these movies. It's just an aesthetic that I really like, and we get one here. I'm sort of in agreement with you that I think this is a property that I almost feel like you could approach this the way some people do with Poe or Lovecraft. Like I've been hearing about, and this will date the show a little bit for when this actually drops. I've been hearing some people talk a little bit about Mike Flanagan's House of Usher.
Oh, okay.
And they've been saying that it's kind of like he's been pulling from a lot of different source material. And we've talked about this with Lovecraft stuff, with all of our Stuart Gordon episodes that we've done. I think there's a way maybe that you could sort of pull this main story of RawHead Rex, and then even maybe like some other elements of the Books of Blood to kind of pad it out a little bit and give it a little bit more substance and turn it into like a really interesting property. I think this is certainly not untouchable.
No, I mean there was just a Books of Blood like TV series, like an anthology series on Hulu. I never got around to watching it, but you know, so that maybe this did get a little adaptation in there that snuck in, or if there's going to be a second season of that, they could fit one in. But yeah, I never got around to watching that. But I appreciate Clive Barker. It would be nice to see like a little bit of a renaissance for him, because he never quite, you know, for all of his master of horror kind of branding, he never quite hit the same heights that Stephen King did. He's always been a little bit more niche and a little bit more weird, but I appreciate his brand of weirdness. And I'd like to see a little bit more of it, maybe, you know, done with a little bit more of a nuanced touch than RawHead Rex got. But yeah. Well, I think that's about all we had about this movie. We did have a little feature that we still have not quite agreed on the name for. It's either what are you full moon featuring, or what are you castle freaking out about? Either one of those. But basically, we'd like to ask everybody here, what else besides RawHead Rex has you really excited? What have you playing, watching, reading, listening to? What's got you excited right now? How about we'll start with Jared?
Okay, so again, dating the show a little bit, but if you want me to answer it sincerely, then this is what I'm going to say. This is closing week of Brooklyn Horror Fest this week, and so I've got a friend of mine, her movie, The Sacrifice Game, is closing the festival on this coming Thursday. Super excited to go see that and hang out at the after party and talk to some industry people, and very excited about that. And I've got another one or two screenings in there too, but I think this one is the big one. It's the closing night. The movie's been getting amazing reviews. I've been trying to, you know, promote it and share a little bit, but it's ran festival circuits in Fantasia and in London and a few places and doing really well. So maybe by the time this episode drops, it will have moved into a different festival circuit. but it's Sacrifice Game, and I'll be seeing it this week at its Brooklyn Horror premiere, closing out the festival. Super excited. My favorite time of the year, not just because it's October, but because I always get a lot of events and stuff in. So, Ivotres, what about you?
Oh, what I have going on or doing?
Yeah.
Or just anything like what are you excited about lately?
Oh man, that's a trick question. Well, I haven't done anything actually besides interview people.
Hey.
I have not been to any festivals or any cons or anything of a sort to anything like that, which is very strange. But yeah, I haven't. So I'm not a boring person.
No, not at all.
I just haven't. I just interviewed a friend of mine. Yeah, we just talked about You Promise, a short film that he did, which was a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Matthew Hirsch. He's working on some really great things, but yeah, his short film won an award at Midsummer Scream.
Oh, cool.
So that was exciting. And I just interviewed him about it, and that was fun. So that should be coming out pretty soon.
Amazing.
But one of the films that I finally watched, I know people. I don't want to say the film because I it's not a short film. It's not an independent film, but I don't want to say it. But it was a recent film because I know everybody's like, don't promote certain things or whatever. But
sure.
The only thing I'm gonna say about it, because I don't want to say the name, but it does have something to do with aliens, and I felt so sad watching it.
Yeah,
if that helps.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. I felt you said interesting because so you have an idea what I'm talking about, but
I'm trying to put it together.
Yeah, but it has something to do with it has something to do with aliens, and I just watched it a couple of hours ago, and I was so sad after watching it. And there's a reason, but I can't talk about it right now. So I don't know. It's just me and films. I always get knee deep in them sometimes. Yeah. But pretty much just watching short films. I don't know if anybody ever seen Beaten to Death. That's an independent film.
Oh yeah, I've been hearing about that one. Yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh. Oh my God.
I mean, it sounds unpleasant just from the title, but like
I explained
maybe in a good way.
Like I did a TikTok, like a video on it, and then I kind of explained it on Instagram. And the only thing I would say about it, because I don't want to give it away, that it was the most depressing, tragic film I've ever seen. I was
it's a bold statement.
Like after I watched, I just sat there and was like, hopelessness.
Yeah.
It felt so bad. And then, but it was a good film, but it was very depressing, like 13 Reasons depressing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. After it was done. And then when I wrote that, the owner of Welcome Villain was like, if you want to interview the director and the actor in it, I was like, oh, I don't even know if my mind could take it, but I want to. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would check it out, but
just be prepared.
Be prepared. It was really tragic, but it was good. So
okay.
So Steve, on that note, what's making you happy, man?
I'm so sorry. I'm the most depressing horror content creator.
Not at all. No. I mean, ironically, like I've been getting joy from something in which people are beating each other to death in pretty horrific ways. I've been playing Mortal Kombat 1. I've been having a lot of fun with that. I think it's one of the better Mortal Kombats in the last couple of years. It's kind of going back to basics of the original game, while also incorporating all the crazy plot and time travel nonsense that's been kind of pervading the series for the last couple of years. So you kind of get a little bit of best of both worlds. If you were an old school Mortal Kombat fan, then you'll have a good time with that one. So I'll say Mortal Kombat. But again, lots of beating people to death in really horrific ways.
Like that's fun beatings. The movie I saw was not fun.
No. I mean, the thing that I've been enjoying about the recent Mortal Kombat games is that they are now finally as violent as our parents always thought they were. Like when our parents were freaking out about Mortal Kombat, no, don't go to the arcades. You can't play that. It's too violent. We need to go to Congress about all this. That you look at those games now and it's like, oh, look, little red pixels, you know, it's like, oh my God, how shocking. Now I'm seeing people's gonads getting sawed in half with a razor blade. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is finally as gross as we were always led to believe it was. And that's been kind of fun for me.
My parents were different.
Oh,
they didn't care. They didn't care.
Me too.
We were we were at the like watching horror movies, playing video games. I couldn't cover my eyes. I was forced to watch, Pet Cemetery, The Fly. You watch it. We paid for it. Yeah.
See,
it was different.
My parents made the effort to be overprotective until I turned about 13. And they're like, yeah, we don't give a shit. Do your thing. But they made the effort. At least when those early games came out, I was not allowed to play them. But eventually they're just like, yeah, we don't care. Yeah.
Well, we used to go to the theaters. Like when I was like 13, 12, 14, we used to go to the theaters and watch rated R. It didn't matter if it was scary. Everything was popping out from everywhere on everybody. It didn't matter until like the 97, they started cracking down on the rated R, and then you had to have someone 18 and over. But yeah, I've seen Ghoulies.
Oh wow,
Demons. Oh my God. One I'm proud of. I'm just so proud of. I saw Evil Dead 2 at the drive-in opening weekend. I could actually say that. I'm so proud.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
That might be the single best like movie accomplishment that we've heard from a guest so far, is to be able to say Evil Dead 2 in the drive-in. Because
you were there day one.
Yeah.
Aliens and Abyss.
Oh, okay. Those would be amazing.
Yeah.
I still, to my great regret, I've still never seen a drive-in movie. I've never been to a drive-in.
Well,
I've been to like outdoor movies,
but
I grew up I'm in Austin now, which is pretty huge, but like I grew up very rural and very isolated, so we didn't have a lot of options. I literally saw 5 movies in the theaters in the 90s. Like because we were so far away from movie theaters, it would be like an all-day trek if we wanted to go see a movie. So I saw 5 of them. I made up for it eventually, but yeah.
So I'm in Brooklyn, and I grew up here. Well, not in Brooklyn, but in New York City, and there's not really drive-in theaters here, but there are some that are not too far, so you can kind of venture a little bit into upstate New York. Where my friend and I like to go out to Pennsylvania, about a 2.5-hour drive from here, to the Mahoning Drive-In, because they do all kinds of amazing horror events, and so we usually make a weekend out of it. And I've seen a lot of stuff in repertory screenings. Like they'll do a bunch of horror events, and they'll do a triple feature. So I've seen a lot of things in drive-ins, but not like first run. Like I really wasn't seeing them then. Most of it when I was younger was just in a movie theater.
So special.
Yes, you got that over us. You definitely got that over us.
So Steve, we just said the same thing.
I think
at the exact same time.
Yeah, Jinx, we've just summoned you. Yeah, sorry.
We do us a favor. First of all, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this movie. I love the fact that you picked it, because it was sometimes like people, get back to us with, oh, can we do this movie? Can we do this movie? And it's like, sometimes it's a real heavy hitter, and it's like, I got to say, oh no, we already recorded that one and it hasn't dropped yet, or we've already got it scheduled with somebody. But for this one, you picked it, and I was like, awesome. And it was like, it was still out there, and I'm just glad that this was the one you picked. But just take a minute here to kind of let our listeners know where they can find you and what you do on your channel, because I love your approach to horror and the stuff that you've been doing, and you put out great content. So tell our listeners about it a little bit.
Well, so yes, I'm the creator and host of Horror Movies and Beyond. And the show is about reviewing horror movies for the living to understand the dead.
Ooh.
And I, like I said, review horror movies, but my specialty is interviewing the horror creators, directors, producers, writers from the films. That's a lot of fun. You always find more information than just watching the film. I love the behind the scenes about that. So that's kind of my approach. I really like deep diving into the mind of the person I'm talking to, the creator of the film, because I found that most of the time it is some of their personal experience in the film.
Yeah.
And it can be very therapeutic, or they're just doing it for other reasons. I've had people, cry and just express gratitude. And sometimes I discover things in their films that they have not seen. I've had some of them say, I need to go back and watch my own movie. But not in a bad way. It's not in a bad way. It's just how I dissect it. I see things from the clothing, from the atmosphere, the story, go beyond it. I use my own personal experience to find things in a film. It's kind of like a puzzle. So it's like I'm a completed puzzle, but I take a puzzle piece and it's like I'm trying to find a place to place it. Once I do that, then I connect, and then I find some kind of trauma. Not all trauma is bad trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But I find something in there. And so I'm able to break that down in the reasoning behind my thoughts about their films. If you pay attention to the interviews, we are reviewing their own movie, regardless if it is the director. So it's not just, me and some content creator, me, director, producer, we're breaking down their own film. So it's actually interesting because they could tell how I feel about it just by the way we're talking about it. So that's pretty much it. You could find me on Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter, or whatever that is. But yeah, you could Google horror movies and beyond, and everything about me will pop up in the first thing.
Awesome. I highly recommend that everyone who's listening jump on to all of those social media platforms, follow, subscribe. A lot of really amazing content being made. If you like what we do here, then jump on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Drop us a 5-star review, 5-star rating, I should say, maybe a short review if you feel inclined. You can email us with questions, comments, feedback, corrections, anything at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Instagram at puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me personally at _cowboy. Nope, that's not that anymore. I changed my handle. _Jallo_Jerry, or Steve at Minotaur Matador. And just to let us know and leave us some feedback and spread the word of the show if you like what we do. Tell a friend and help us to reach a bigger audience. Steve, also, you have another show, probably a good opportunity to plug that one a little bit here.
I do, absolutely. My other podcast is called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade, but one word with a big A in the middle. That's the show where we are talking about movies and the video game adaptations that came off of them. So each week we'll watch a movie, we'll play the game based on it. So it's been a lot of fun. We recently had Jared on to talk about Puppet Master, which is now a video game, what we had a lot of fun with. And we've got a bunch of great stuff coming up. I think this episode's coming out after October, but we did all like scary movies all for the month of October. I'm getting ready to record our episode on the Blair Witch Project later tonight, which should be a lot of fun.
Amazing.
And so, definitely check that out. And be sure to check out our show next week, because we are going to be talking about, we're returning to a series that we've only just recently touched upon. We're going back to it already. We're talking about Demonic Toys 2. Now, we've been catching a little flack, I think, because we have not been as big of fans of the original Demonic Toys as a lot of other Full Moon fans are.
It is
a lot of people
real
really love
point
this
of
movie.
contention for some people.
So we'll see if Demonic Toys 2 brings us around on the series. I have my predictions, but we'll find out.
Oh, I forgot one more thing.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe I forgot it. My other show, it's Preternatural Mysteries, where we explore the paranormal, supernatural, and the unexplained. So me and my co-host, Dr. Levy, we were on hiatus for about a year or so, but we will be returning next month A pre-show actually comes out with a different co-host, which is a special guest on the 10/29. Yeah,
Okay.
October 29th. But so basically the show talks about, we explore where the horror movies come from. So yeah. So
Amazing. I love
that's
that.
pretty much what the what the show is about. It's a lot of fun because I like that stuff. You know, I talk about horror movies, but I like talking about the paranormal, ghosts and goblins, and behind the scenes of certain things. But I am also a scaredy cat. I do not like ghosts or anything or haunted houses. So it's funny, I talk about it, but you won't catch me going in.
Right. This is how
Fair.
you exercise your demons. It's like you
Exactly.
have a
Yeah.
conversation, and that takes care of it
I'm
for
the
you.
one. Yeah. So if we went into a haunted house, I want the car keys because
Okay,
I'm the first
fair.
one out the door. Yeah. I'm not waiting or saving anyone. I'm one
Fair
of
enough.
those.
I appreciate the honesty up front. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listeners, thank you so much. Be sure to check out Ivotres on all of her different shows and platforms that we mentioned. Keep plugging along with us as we get into some super, super fun episodes coming up and a little more YouTube content on the way as well. But listeners, join us next week for Demonic Toys 2. See you then.